The Blood Ravens chapter stands as one of the more enigmatic space marine brotherhoods within the Imperium of mankind. While many Imperial citizens, and even some scholars of the Adeptus Administratum, erroneously believe that the chapter's history began with the well-documented Tartarus campaign, the truth lies buried much deeper in Imperial records. The Blood Ravens' documented history stretches back considerably further, with confirmed operations dating to at least the 37th millennium, nearly 3,000 years before their campaigns on Tartarus. This misconception about the chapter's origins stems partly from the Blood Ravens' own unusual predicament. They are a chapter with extensive gaps in their historical records. Unlike most Space Marine chapters, who can trace their lineage directly to one of the first founding legions and their respective Primarchs, the Blood Ravens' genetic heritage remains a mystery even to themselves. This unusual circumstance has led to the chapter's near-obsessive pursuit of knowledge, particularly regarding their own past. The earliest substantiated records of Blood Ravens' operations date to the Hellion Sector campaigns in the mid-37th millennium. During this period, the chapter deployed 3 full companies to quell a series of uprisings across multiple systems. Historical documentation from this campaign describes the Blood Ravens' distinctive crimson and bone-colored power armor, as well as their already well-established reputation for fielding an unusually high number of battle psychers. Imperial Guard regiments who fought alongside them noted the chapter's methodical approach to warfare and their habit of collecting artifacts and data from the worlds they fought upon. Even earlier fragmentary references exist in the archives of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus, suggesting possible Blood Ravens' involvement in suppressing a minor demonic incursion in the Segmentum Obscurus around 361 M36. However, these records remain contested by some Imperial historians due to inconsistencies in unit designations and tactical descriptions. The chapter's fortress monastery, known as the Keep on Orlaia, served as their primary base of operations until its destruction. Located on the now-lost planet Orlaia in the Orlaia subsector of the Coriolanese sector, this imposing structure housed the chapter's most sacred relics and extensive librarium. The Keep's architecture reflected the Blood Ravens' reverence for knowledge, featuring massive data vaults and scriptorium chambers, alongside the expected training facilities and armories common to all Space Marine fortress monasteries. What sets the Blood Ravens apart from many of their fellow chapters is their unusually high proportion of battle brothers manifesting psychic abilities. While all Space Marine chapters maintain librarians, warrior psychers who harness the powers of the warp in battle, the Blood Ravens have historically fielded significantly more than the norm. This abundance of psychic talent has shaped their combat doctrine and chapter culture profoundly over the millennia. The most significant figure in early Blood Ravens history is undoubtedly Azariah Vidia, correctly recognized as the first chief librarian of the chapter, not merely a librarian as some erroneous accounts suggest. The distinction is crucial, as Vidia didn't simply serve as one psyker among many, but established the foundational principles that would guide the chapter's librarius for millennia to come. His influence on Blood Ravens' doctrine cannot be overstated. Azariah Vidia's legacy extends far beyond his role as chief librarian. Historical texts describe him as a psyker of exceptional power who possessed an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Under his guidance, the Blood Ravens established their tradition of maintaining extensive records and collecting artifacts from their campaigns. The chapter's battle cry, "Knowledge is power, guard it well," is attributed directly to Vidia, reflecting his philosophy that information was as valuable a weapon as bolter or chainsword. The Omnis Arcanum, the chapter's most sacred repository of knowledge, was established under Vidia's direction. This vast collection of tomes, data crystals, and artifacts contains millennia of accumulated wisdom, tactical analyses, and historical records. Access to different sections of the Omnis Arcanum is strictly regulated according to rank and need, with the deepest vaults accessible only to the chapter master and chief librarian. Vidia also codified the Blood Ravens' distinctive approach to warfare, emphasizing adaptability, intelligence gathering, and the tactical application of psychic abilities. His treatise, The Paths of the Raven, preserved in fragmentary form within the Omnis Arcanum, outlines principles of engagement that continue to influence chapter doctrine in the 41st millennium. The text emphasizes the importance of understanding enemy patterns and exploiting weaknesses rather than relying solely on brute force, an approach that has served the Blood Ravens well across countless battlefields. Archaeological evidence recovered from Orlaia before its loss suggests that the keep was constructed in the late 36th or early 37th millennium, lending credence to the timeline of the chapter's founding. The architecture incorporated elements reminiscent of Terra's ancient scholarly institutions, with vast circular chambers designed for the storage and study of knowledge. Defensive systems were integrated seamlessly into this scholarly design, creating a fortress that was both an impregnable stronghold and a center of learning. The Blood Raven's heraldry, a raven with a drop of blood between its wings, appears consistently throughout their documented history. Chapter traditions hold that the raven symbolizes knowledge and foresight, while the blood drop represents both sacrifice and the gene seed that binds battle brothers together. This iconography appears on armor dating back to their earliest confirmed campaigns, suggesting the symbol was adopted at or very near the chapter's founding. One of the most persistent mysteries surrounding the Blood Ravens is the identity of their Primarch. Unlike chapters such as the Ultramarines or Imperial Fists, who can trace their lineage directly to Robout Guilliman or Rogel Dorn respectively, the Blood Ravens possess no records indicating which of the Emperor's sons provided their gene seed. This absence has fueled centuries of speculation, both within the chapter and among Imperial scholars. Several theories regarding the Blood Ravens' genetic heritage have emerged over the millennia. Some point to their high incidence of psychic manifestation as evidence of descent from the Thousand Sons, though this remains highly controversial given that legions fall to chaos. Others suggest potential links to the Blood Angels, citing nominal similarities and certain shared genetic markers, though significant physiological differences make this unlikely. A minority view proposes that the Blood Ravens might be descended from one of the lost Primarchs, whose entire histories were expunged from Imperial records. The chapter's own investigations into their origins have been thorough but largely inconclusive. Expeditions to recover ancient data from abandoned Imperial facilities, archaeological digs on worlds associated with the Great Crusade, and careful analysis of their own gene seed have yielded tantalizing clues but no definitive answers. This ongoing search has become deeply ingrained in chapter culture, with many Blood Ravens viewing the discovery of their true heritage as a sacred quest. Throughout the 37th and 38th millennia, the Blood Ravens participated in numerous Imperial campaigns across multiple sectors. Records from this period describe their deployment against Orc in the Segmentum Tempestus, the suppression of heretical uprisings in the Gothic sector, and defense against Eldar raids along the eastern fringe. These accounts consistently note the chapter's methodical approach to warfare and their practice of gathering intelligence before committing to battle. The Proxima Rebellion of 723 M38 represents one of the better documented early Blood Ravens campaigns. When the planetary governor of Proxima Centauri, IV, declared independence from the Imperium, the Blood Ravens deployed their 3rd and 5th companies to restore Imperial rule. Rather than launching a direct assault on the governor's fortress, chapter records describe how their librarians psychically mapped the rebel defenses, while scout squads identified critical vulnerabilities. The subsequent precision strike neutralized the rebellion's leadership with minimal civilian casualties, exemplifying the chapter's preference for surgical operations over overwhelming force when circumstances permit. During the 39th millennium, the Blood Ravens faced one of their greatest challenges when a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Behemoth threatened the Aurelian subsector. The chapter committed 6 full companies to the defense, fighting a series of brutal engagements across multiple systems. Their fortress monastery on Orlaia served as the command center for Imperial forces throughout the campaign. Though they ultimately succeeded in breaking the Tyranid advance, the victory came at tremendous cost, with nearly 200 battle brothers falling in combat. The aftermath of this campaign saw several significant developments in chapter organization. Recognizing the need to adapt to the Tyranid threat, the Blood Ravens revised certain tactical doctrines and incorporated new weapon systems specifically designed to counter the Xenos' biology. Additionally, the chapter expanded its librarious facilities to enhance their psychic screening capabilities, as the shadow and the warp phenomenon associated with Tyranid hive fleets had proven particularly challenging for their psyker brethren. Throughout these early centuries, the Blood Ravens demonstrated a particular talent for adapting to diverse enemy threats. Unlike some chapters that developed highly specialized approaches to warfare, the Blood Ravens cultivated flexibility and tactical innovation. This adaptability would serve them well in the millennia to come, as they faced the full spectrum of threats confronting the Imperium, from conventional rebellions to demonic incursions, from orc hordes to Tyranid swarms. The Blood Ravens' emphasis on knowledge gathering extended beyond military applications. Chapter archives contain extensive xenobiological studies, astronomical observations, and anthropological records collected during their campaigns. While much of this information was shared with appropriate imperial authorities such as the Adeptus Mechanicus or Ordo Xenos, the chapter maintained their own comprehensive records, building a repository of knowledge that would prove invaluable in future engagements. The Blood Ravens' nomadic nature, following the loss of Orlaia, necessitated adaptation in how they preserved their sacred traditions and artifacts. While many chapters maintain a single fortress monastery anchored to their homeworld, the Blood Ravens were forced to distribute their command structure and reliquary across their fleet. Chief among these vessels is the battle barge Omnis Arcanum, a name that honors their repository of knowledge but should not be confused with the collection itself. The vessel serves as the chapter's mobile headquarters, housing the chapter master, senior officers, and the most precious artifacts recovered throughout their history. It is worth noting that prior to the loss of Orlaia, the Blood Ravens maintained a proper fortress monastery called the Sanctum. This massive structure, built into the mountains of Orlaia's northern continent, combined defensive capabilities with extensive archival chambers. The Sanctum featured concentric rings of fortifications surrounding a central spire that housed the chapter's most sacred relics and texts. Ancient accounts describe vast underground vaults containing stasis-sealed chambers where particularly dangerous artifacts were stored, protected by both physical barriers and psychic wards maintained by the chapter's librarians. The architecture of the Sanctum reflected the dual nature of the Blood Ravens as both warriors and scholars. Training grounds and armories occupied the outer rings, while the inner sections housed scriptoria, meditation chambers, and data vaults. The chapter's initiates would progress physically inward as they advanced in rank and knowledge, with only the most senior brothers permitted access to the innermost sanctums. This physical progression mirrored the Blood Ravens' philosophy that knowledge must be earned through service and sacrifice. When Orlaia was lost to the warp, the Blood Ravens managed to evacuate many of their most precious artifacts and texts, though countless irreplaceable items were lost. This catastrophic event deepened the chapter's obsession with preserving knowledge, as they had experienced firsthand how quickly millennia of accumulated wisdom could vanish. The battle barge Omnis Arcanum became the repository for these salvaged treasures, its interior reconfigured to accommodate secure storage vaults and study chambers. The Blood Ravens' command structure follows the organizational guidelines of the Codex Astartes in broad strokes, though with several notable adaptations reflecting their unique culture. Like most Codex-compliant chapters, they maintain 10 companies of roughly 100 battle brothers each, with the first company composed of veterans and the 10th serving as a scout company for initiates. Each company is led by a captain who answers directly to the chapter master. Where the Blood Ravens diverge significantly from Codex organization is in the prominence and structure of their librarius. While the standard Codex recommends a small cadre of librarians serving primarily in advisory and specialized combat roles, the Blood Ravens maintain a much larger complement of psychers who are fully integrated into tactical planning at all levels. This adaptation reflects both their unusually high rate of psychic manifestation and their philosophical emphasis on knowledge as a weapon. The Blood Raven's Librarius is organized into several tiers of expertise and specialization. Lexicanum serve as the most junior rank, focusing primarily on developing control over their abilities and assisting more senior librarians in research. Codicers form the backbone of the Librarius, serving with battle companies and conducting independent research into various psychic disciplines. Epistolaries represent the elite of the chapter's psychers, having mastered multiple disciplines and often leading specialized task forces. Contrary to some apocryphal accounts, the Blood Ravens do not maintain a rank of epistolary thaumaturge. This erroneous designation appears in several imperial records, likely due to a misinterpretation of internal chapter terminology. The Blood Ravens occasionally use the term thaumaturgy to describe certain psychic techniques, particularly those involving the manipulation of physical matter or energy, but this represents a specialization rather than a formal rank within their hierarchy. At the apex of the Librarius stands the Chief Librarian, who serves as both the chapter's most powerful psyker and the guardian of its accumulated knowledge. This individual holds a position of extraordinary influence within the chapter, serving as the chapter master's chief advisor and often directing strategic operations where psychic threats are involved. Throughout their history, the Blood Ravens have often selected chief librarians who demonstrate not only powerful psychic abilities, but also exceptional scholarly aptitude and strategic acumen. The Blood Ravens' combat doctrine emphasizes flexibility, intelligence gathering, and precision strikes rather than overwhelming force. Before committing to battle, they typically deploy scout marines and librarians to gather extensive information about enemy positions, capabilities, and vulnerabilities. This intelligence is analyzed by senior officers to identify critical targets and develop tailored battle plans that maximize effectiveness while minimizing casualties and collateral damage. When engaging enemies directly, the Blood Ravens favor mobile strike forces capable of rapidly redeploying to exploit emerging weaknesses. Assault Marines, Land Speeders, and Thunderhawk gunships feature prominently in their arsenal, allowing them to execute lightning raids and swift flanking maneuvers. The chapter maintains a larger-than-average complement of dreadnoughts, honoring their fallen heroes while preserving their knowledge and experience for future generations. Librarians play a critical role in Blood Raven's battle plans, serving not only as powerful combatants but also as tactical assets. Their psychic abilities allow them to detect hidden enemies, disrupt enemy communications, and provide real-time intelligence to field commanders. In particularly challenging engagements, multiple librarians may combine their powers to achieve effects beyond the capabilities of a single psyker, though such practices are carefully monitored to avoid the dangers of warp exposure. The Blood Raven's approach to warfare is perhaps best exemplified by the Ross Paradise campaign in the early 40th millennium. When a Genestealer cult infiltrated this prosperous hive world, the chapter deployed elements of their 3rd and 5th companies under the command of Captain Madiel. Rather than purging entire hive blocks, as some more zealous chapters might have done, the Blood Ravens used their librarians to psychically scan population centers, identifying infected individuals with surgical precision. Once the cult's leadership structure was mapped, the Blood Ravens executed simultaneous strikes against key nodes, decapitating the cult's command while minimizing civilian casualties. Scout squads equipped with specialized Auspex devices tracked fleeing cult members, ensuring that no seed of corruption remained to threaten the planet in the future. Imperial authorities later cited this operation as a model of efficient Xenos purging, preserving the planet's productive capacity while thoroughly eliminating the threat. The chapter's recruitment practices have necessarily evolved since the loss of Orlia. Historically, they drew aspirants primarily from Orlia and neighboring worlds in the subsector, selecting children who demonstrated both physical potential and intellectual aptitude. Trials for potential recruits emphasized problem-solving and adaptability, alongside the expected tests of strength and courage, reflecting the chapter's values. In the aftermath of Orlia's loss, the Blood Ravens established a rotating recruitment pattern, drawing candidates from various worlds across the subsectors where they operate. This approach has introduced greater genetic diversity into their ranks, while allowing them to select from a wider pool of potential aspirants. Some within the chapter argue that this diversity has strengthened them, bringing fresh perspectives and talents that might have been missed under their previous, more localized recruitment system. The training of Bloodraven's neophytes differs somewhat from standard codex practices. While all Space Marine aspirants undergo extensive physical conditioning and combat training, Bloodraven's initiates also receive instruction in scholarly disciplines from the earliest stages of their transformation. Even as their bodies are reshaped by implanted gene seed organs, their minds are challenged with tactical problems, historical studies, and basic scientific principles. This intellectual training serves multiple purposes. It identifies those with potential psychic abilities who might eventually join the Librarius, instills the chapter's reverence for knowledge from the outset, and develops the analytical thinking necessary for their approach to warfare. By the time a neophyte takes his place as a full battle brother, he is expected to be not merely a warrior, but also a scholar in his own right, capable of operating independently when circumstances demand it. The Bloodraven's gene seed has been subject to extensive study both within the chapter and by the Adeptus Mechanicus during mandatory tithes. These examinations have revealed several minor mutations that distinguish their genetic material from that of other chapters. Most notably, Bloodravens display an unusually high rate of psychic potential, with approximately 1 in 30 battle brothers manifesting abilities strong enough to warrant Librarius training, a rate significantly higher than the Imperium-wide average for Astartes. Other observed deviations include slightly enhanced neurological activity in the cerebrum and an unusual resistance to certain types of warp influence. These mutations are considered stable and non-threatening by Mechanicus genitors, though they have provided no definitive evidence regarding the chapter's genetic lineage. Some speculate that these characteristics might represent deliberate modifications rather than random mutations, potentially offering clues to their origins if properly interpreted. The Bloodravens maintain several distinct traditions that set them apart from other chapters. Perhaps most distinctive is their practice of knowledge tithing, wherein each battle brother is expected to contribute new information to the chapter's archives after every campaign. These contributions might include tactical observations, xenobiological data, historical records recovered from ancient sites, or technical specifications of enemy weapons. This constant accumulation of knowledge ensures that the chapter's understanding of potential threats continues to expand with each engagement. Another significant tradition is the Rite of Memory, performed when a battle brother falls in combat. Rather than simply honoring the fallen warrior's prowess, the Bloodravens gather to share specific memories and knowledge that the deceased had accumulated. This practice serves both to preserve valuable information that might otherwise be lost, and to reinforce the chapter's belief that a Space Marine's true legacy lies in the wisdom he shares rather than merely the enemies he slays. The Bloodravens also maintain an unusual tradition regarding recovered artifacts. While many chapters collect war trophies, the Bloodravens approach this practice with scholarly rigor. Each item recovered from the battlefield is carefully documented, studied, and classified according to its historical significance, technological properties, and potential utility. This has led to the accumulation of an extensive collection of weapons, armor, and devices drawn from across the Imperium and beyond, each meticulously cataloged and stored. This practice has occasionally generated friction with other Imperial organizations, particularly the Adeptus Mechanicus, who view certain technological artifacts as falling under their exclusive jurisdiction. The Bloodravens maintain that their collection serves the Emperor's will by preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost, though they are careful to respect clear boundaries regarding particularly sensitive items, such as AI technologies or major archaeotech discoveries. The archives of the Omnis Arcanum contain meticulous records of the Bloodravens' campaigns throughout the millennia, though even these sacred texts are not without errors and omissions. Recent archaeological expeditions and recovered data slates have necessitated several significant revisions to the chapter's operational history, particularly regarding the chronology and nature of their engagements in the Aurelian subsector. One of the most persistent misconceptions concerns the tyrannid presence encountered by the Blood Ravens in the Aurelian subsector. Contrary to widespread reports, these Xenos forces were not elements of Hive Fleet Leviathan, as initially classified in preliminary field assessments. Detailed genetic analysis of recovered specimens and comparison with the Ordo Xenos xenobiological database confirmed that the Aurelian infestation originated from a previously undesignated splinter fleet. This splinter had broken off from one of the major Hive fleets following its passage through the Ultima Segmentum, developing distinct evolutionary adaptations during its isolated journey through the void. The misidentification stemmed from superficial morphological similarities between certain warrior forms encountered on Typhon and those documented during Leviathan incursions elsewhere in the sector. However, chitin samples recovered from tyrannid corpses on Calderis displayed a distinctive cellular structure inconsistent with Leviathan's genetic markers. Spectroscopic analysis of their bioweapons revealed unique biochemical compounds not present in confirmed Leviathan specimens. This distinction is crucial not merely for taxonomic accuracy, but for strategic assessment. Splinter fleets often develop specialized adaptations and behavioral patterns divergent from their parent hives. Captain Apollo Diomes, upon reviewing the corrected classification, ordered a comprehensive reassessment of all tactical data gathered during the campaign. The revised understanding of the Splinter Fleet's capabilities informed subsequent Blood Ravens operations against tyrannid forces throughout the subsector, particularly regarding the effectiveness of specific weapons loadouts and deployment patterns against their unique biological adaptations. Another significant historical inaccuracy concerns the Tartarus campaign and the identity of the Chaos forces that the Blood Ravens confronted there. Initial reports circulated among Imperial authorities suggested that the primary antagonists were elements of the Black Legion under Abaddon's distant command. This misattribution appears to have originated with local planetary defense forces who lacked the expertise to properly identify specific Traitor Legion heraldry and organizational patterns. In truth, the Chaos forces on Tartarus were predominantly Alpha Legion operatives led by the sorcerer Sindri, Mur and his military commander, Lord Bale. The Alpha Legion's presence was deliberately obscured through their characteristic use of mortal cultist proxies and false flag operations designed to mislead Imperial forces about their true numbers and intentions. This deception extended to their ultimate objective, the recovery of the Maledictum, an ancient artifact containing a powerful demon of Khorne. The Blood Raven's own after-action reports, compiled by librarian Isidore Akios before his fall to Chaos, correctly identified the Alpha Legion's involvement. His field notes described distinctive tactical patterns consistent with Alpha Legion doctrine, decentralized command structures, extensive use of human agents, and psychological warfare techniques designed to sow confusion among Imperial defenders. Recovered Vox recordings of intercepted enemy communications revealed code phrases and encryption patterns previously documented in other confirmed Alpha Legion operations. Lord Bale's personal heraldry, documented by picked captures from Blood Raven's helmet auto-senses, displayed the Hydra iconography characteristic of the Alpha Legion, though deliberately obscured by additional Chaos markings to confuse casual observation. Sindri Mur's psychic signature, analyzed by the chapter's librarius, exhibited the particular warp resonance associated with Alpha Legion sorcerers rather than the distinctly different emanations typical of Black Legion psychers. This correction holds significant tactical implications, as the Alpha Legion's methods differ substantially from those of the Black Legion. While Abaddon's forces typically favor direct confrontation and overwhelming force, the Alpha Legion employs subterfuge, infiltration, and manipulation to achieve their objectives. Understanding the true nature of the enemy on Tartarus has informed the Blood Raven's subsequent security protocols, particularly regarding the vetting of local allies and the defense of sensitive information. Perhaps the most consequential historical error requiring correction involves the chronology of the Blood Raven's major campaigns in the region. Imperial records and even some internal chapter documents incorrectly place the Cronus campaign before the Tartarus engagement, a sequencing error that has led to misunderstandings regarding the chapter's tactical evolution and the progression of certain chaos plots against them. Archival evidence conclusively demonstrates that the Tartarus campaign preceded the chapter's operations on Cronus by approximately 5.7 Terran years. The dating can be verified through multiple independent sources: astropathic communication logs, administratum tithe records from neighboring systems, and orbital decay patterns of debris left in the aftermath of void engagements above both worlds. The correct sequence begins with the Tartarus campaign, where the Blood Ravens under Captain Gabriel Angelos confronted the Alpha Legion forces seeking the Maledictum. This engagement marked the chapter's first documented encounter with this particular Chaos Warband, and established the pattern of interest in ancient artifacts that would characterize subsequent conflicts. The betrayal of librarian Isidore Akios during this campaign had profound effects on chapter protocol regarding the handling of chaos artifacts and the psychic screening of battle brothers exposed to warp influence. Following Tartarus, the Blood Ravens conducted several smaller operations throughout the subsector before their deployment to Cronus, where they came into conflict not only with Chaos forces, but also with the Tau Empire, Necrons, and even fellow Imperial forces under General Stern of the Imperial Guard. This campaign's complexity stemmed partly from the lessons learned on Tartarus, particularly regarding the potential for hidden Chaos influence among seemingly loyal Imperial citizens. The chronological correction clarifies several otherwise puzzling aspects of the Blood Raven's tactical evolution. The increased emphasis on psychic screening protocols observed during the Cronus campaign directly resulted from the chapter's experience with Akios' corruption on Tartarus. Similarly, Captain Angelo's unusually cautious approach to ancient ruins on Cronus reflected his first-hand experience with the Maledictum rather than representing a spontaneous tactical innovation. From a strategic perspective, understanding the correct sequence reveals the progressive nature of chaos operations against the Blood Ravens. What initially appeared to be unconnected incursions can now be recognized as a series of escalating probes, each building upon intelligence gathered during previous engagements. This pattern suggests a level of coordination among chaos forces that transcends the boundaries of individual campaigns, a concerning development that Chapter Command continues to investigate. The Blood Ravens' approach to the Cronus campaign was significantly informed by their experiences on Tartarus, particularly regarding the handling of ancient artifacts and potential chaos corruption. Captain Davian Thewel's operational directives to his forces included specific protocols for securing and containing archaeological sites that directly referenced procedures developed in the aftermath of the Maledictum incident. These connections become unintelligible when the chronology is inverted. Archaeological evidence supports the corrected timeline. Excavations at the Tartarus landing sites revealed stratification patterns consistent with the revised dating, with Blood Raven's equipment fragments found in layers that predate similar materials recovered from Cronus. Void radiation decay in debris fields surrounding both planets similarly confirms the proper sequence of engagements. The confusion regarding chronology appears to have originated from administrative errors in the Departamento Munitorum, whose record-keeping during this period was compromised by a series of warp storms that disrupted astropathic communications throughout the sector. These disruptions resulted in campaign reports being filed out of sequence, with later clarifications lost amid the bureaucratic machinery of the Imperium. The Blood Raven's own records suffered from data corruption following damage to several key archive servers during a boarding action against their fleet between the two campaigns. Chapter Master Azariah Kairas, whose own rise to leadership occurred during this period, contributed to the confusion through his selective editing of chapter records, an action later revealed to be part of his long-term corruption by chaos influences. By obscuring the true sequence of events, Kairos made it more difficult for other chapter officers to recognize patterns that might have revealed his treachery earlier. The implications of these historical corrections extend beyond mere academic interest. They fundamentally alter our understanding of the Blood Raven's strategic situation during a critical period in their history. The chapter's conflicts with various xeno-species and chaos forces throughout the Aurelian subsector represent not a series of disconnected engagements, but a coherent progression, with each campaign building upon the last in a complex web of cause and effect. For the Blood Ravens themselves, these corrections have prompted a reevaluation of their tactical doctrine. The chapter's librarius has undertaken a comprehensive review of all battle records from this period, seeking to identify other potential misconceptions that might compromise their operational effectiveness. This process has already yielded several tactical insights regarding Tyranid adaptation patterns and Alpha Legion infiltration methods that have been incorporated into current training protocols. Captain Apollo Diomes ordered the establishment of a dedicated archival team to verify the accuracy of all chapter records predating the Aurelian Crusades. This team, composed of librarians and tech marines working in concert, has developed new authentication protocols to prevent similar errors from compromising future operations. Their work has already uncovered several other minor chronological inconsistencies, though none as significant as those regarding Tartarus and Cronus. The corrected understanding of the Blood Raven's engagement with the Tyranid splinter fleet has led to revised tactical doctrines specifically tailored to this variant's unique characteristics. Analysis of combat data revealed that these organisms displayed unusual resistance to flamers and melta-weapons compared to documented Leviathan strains, but showed greater vulnerability to cryogenic weaponry. This information has been shared with other Imperial forces operating in regions where Splinter Fleet activity has been detected. Similarly, the proper identification of Alpha Legion forces on Tartarus has informed counter-infiltration measures throughout the Aurelian subsector. The Blood Ravens now employ specialized Auspex settings calibrated to detect the particular energy signatures associated with Alpha Legion equipment, while librarians have developed psychic scanning techniques specifically designed to pierce the mental obfuscation methods favored by their operatives. The chronological corrections have also clarified the progression of chaos interest in the Blood Ravens chapter itself. What once appeared to be opportunistic corruption attempts can now be recognized as a systematic campaign to undermine the chapter's command structure and access their accumulated knowledge. This understanding has prompted increased security measures surrounding the Omnis Arcanum and other repositories of chapter lore. The Blood Raven's reputation for meticulous record-keeping sometimes obscures the fact that even their extensive archives contain inaccuracies that require correction. Among these is a common misunderstanding regarding Captain Gabriel Angelo's iconic weapon. While correctly identified as God Splitter, many accounts erroneously suggest he wielded this demon hammer during the Tartarus campaign. In truth, Angelos received this formidable weapon only after those events had concluded. During the Tartarus campaign, Angelos carried a standard pattern power sword, as documented in picked captures and after-action reports filed by Blood Raven's squad sergeants. The combat footage recovered from Tartarus clearly shows Angelos wielding this conventional weapon against Alpha Legion forces, and later against demonic entities unleashed by the Maledictum. His skill with the blade was remarkable, but the weapon itself possessed no special properties beyond standard Adeptus Astartes issue. God Splitter came into Angelos' possession following the Tartarus campaign as a reward for his service against the demonic incursion. The weapon was presented to him by Inquisitor Mordecai Toth of the Ordo Malleus, who recognized that Angelos would likely face similar threats in the future. The demon hammer had previously belonged to an inquisitorial operative whose identity remains classified in Ordo Malleus records, though rumors suggest it was recovered from the body of an Inquisitor Lord who fell battling a greater demon in the Gothic sector. The weapon's construction is typical of high-grade demon hammers, a massive adamantium head inscribed with hexagrammic wards and blessed silver inlays, mounted on a haft of reinforced ceramite with power field generators built into the striking surfaces. What distinguishes God Splitter from similar weapons is the complexity and potency of its incorporated wards. Analysis by the chapter's tech marines revealed layered banishment hexes dating from at least 3 different periods of Imperial history, suggesting the weapon was repeatedly modified and enhanced over centuries of service against warp entities. The name God Splitter itself has an interesting provenance. It was not the weapon's original designation, but was bestowed by Angelos himself after he used it to destroy a particularly powerful demon prince on Ross Paradise. The creature had proclaimed itself a god of the warp before Angelos struck it down with a single, reality-sundering blow that not only banished its physical form, but reportedly disrupted its warp presence so thoroughly that it could not reconstitute itself for several centuries. The name commemorates this victory and serves as a reminder that even the mightiest servants of chaos can fall to a determined defender of humanity. Angelos first wielded God Splitter in battle during the pacification of the Hadrian Rebellion, approximately 7 months after the conclusion of the Tartarus campaign. Planetary Defense Force veterans who witnessed the engagement described how the captain used the weapon to devastating effect against the rebel leadership, many of whom had undergone physical mutations suggesting chaos influence. The hammer's disruptive energy field proved particularly effective against warp-strengthened flesh, reducing corrupted commanders to purified ash with each strike. By the time of the Cronus campaign, Angelos had fully integrated the weapon into his combat style, developing specialized techniques that maximized its effectiveness against both demonic entities and more conventional foes. Surviving footage from the Cronus engagement shows how he combined sweeping strikes to clear infantry with precisely targeted blows against hardened targets, using the hammer's considerable mass as a counterbalance during complex maneuvers that would be impossible for a warrior without Astartes augmentation. God Splitter has become inextricably linked with Angelos' identity in Imperial propaganda, appearing in numerous devotional artworks and recruitment materials. The image of the scarred captain raising the massive hammer against the enemies of mankind has inspired countless Imperial citizens and serves as a powerful symbol of the Blood Raven's commitment to combating the forces of chaos wherever they emerge. Another significant historical inaccuracy concerns the relationship between Jonah Orion and Azariah Vidya. Popular accounts often describe Orion as having been directly mentored by Vidya, suggesting a personal connection between these two powerful psychers. This claim appears in several quasi-historical texts, including Heroes of the Aurelian Crusades by Remembrancer Kellys and The Raven's Path by scholar Captain Tantheus. However, a careful examination of the chronology makes this relationship impossible. Azariah Vidya served as chief librarian of the Blood Ravens in the late 36th millennium, establishing the foundational principles of the chapter's Librarius and overseeing the creation of the Omnis Arcanum. His death is recorded in chapter annals as occurring in 894 M36 following psychic injuries sustained while battling a major warp incursion in the Vorga system. In contrast, Jonah Orion was born on Cyrene in the late 40th millennium, nearly 4,000 years after Vidya's death. The confusion appears to stem from Orion's deep study of Vidya's writings. As a young lexicanum, Orion displayed an exceptional affinity for the psychic disciplines that Vidya had pioneered, particularly those involving divination and the manipulation of the materium through warp energies. Recognizing this talent, his instructors granted him access to preserved transcripts of Vidya's teachings, a rare privilege for one of his junior rank. Orion immersed himself in these ancient texts, internalizing Vidya's philosophical approach to psyker abilities and his cautious methodology for warp interaction. Over decades of service, Orion refined his understanding of Vidya's techniques, often spending his limited rest periods in meditation upon particularly obscure passages from the first chief librarian's journals. This dedicated study created a form of intellectual lineage between the two psychers, with Orion serving as the foremost modern interpreter of Vidya's more complex theories. Senior members of the Librarius noted that Orion's psychic manifestations sometimes echoed patterns described in accounts of Vidya's own abilities, suggesting that his deep study had allowed him to recreate techniques that had been largely forgotten in the intervening millennia. This intellectual connection was formalized when Orion was appointed keeper of the Vidian tomes, a position within the Librarius responsible for preserving and interpreting the collected writings of Azariah Vidya. In this capacity, he supervised the restoration of several damaged manuscripts and corrected transcription errors that had crept into copies made over the centuries. His commentaries on Vidya's more esoteric works became standard references for Bloodraven's librarians, studied alongside the original texts. The misconception that Orion was directly mentored by Vidya likely originated from this close scholarly association. In the fluid oral traditions that supplement written records among the chapter's battle brothers, the precise nature of the relationship became distorted over time. What began as acknowledgement of Orion's expertise regarding Vidya's teachings gradually transformed into a claim of direct tutelage, particularly among newer initiates less familiar with the chapter's chronology. This error was inadvertently reinforced by Orion's own manner of speaking about Vidya. Those who served alongside him noted that he would often refer to insights from the ancient chief librarian with such immediacy and personal connection that it created the impression of direct knowledge. Vidya teaches us that the warp responds to certainty, he might say, or as the master would caution, divination without discipline invites deception. This present tense framing, common among scholarly devotees of any historical figure, contributed to the misunderstanding. The reality of their relationship, a posthumous intellectual apprenticeship spanning millennia, is in many ways more remarkable than the mistaken notion of direct mentorship. It demonstrates the Bloodraven's commitment to preserving and building upon their accumulated knowledge across thousands of years, allowing the wisdom of their greatest minds to guide subsequent generations long after their physical deaths. This continuity of knowledge represents one of the chapter's greatest strengths, enabling them to maintain consistent approaches to warp phenomena despite the inherent dangers of psychic practice. Orion's expertise in Vidian methodologies proved particularly valuable during the Aurelian Crusades. When confronted with complex warp manifestations or demonic entities, he could draw upon analytical frameworks developed millennia earlier, applying ancient wisdom to new threats. This intellectual heritage provided the Bloodravens with unique advantages when facing warp-based challenges, allowing them to comprehend phenomena that might have bewildered less knowledgeable psychers. The Bloodraven's emphasis on preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations extends beyond the relationship between Vidya and Orion. The chapter maintains several specialized positions dedicated to this purpose, including the keepers of the epistolaries, who preserve combat techniques, the chronographers, who maintain historical records, and the mnemonists, who specialize in the accurate oral transmission of information too sensitive to record in physical form. Together, these knowledge keepers ensure that the insights and experiences of each generation of battle brothers remain accessible to their successors. This system allowed Jonah Orion to benefit from Azariah Vidya's wisdom despite the vast temporal gulf separating them. Through careful study of preserved texts, analysis of psychic techniques recorded by intervening generations of librarians, and meditation upon the philosophical principles that guided Vidya's approach to the warp, Orion developed a profound understanding of his predecessor's methodologies. In some respects, this deep scholarly engagement provided a more comprehensive grasp of Vidya's teachings than might have been possible through direct mentorship, as Orion could study the entirety of the ancient chief librarian's work, rather than only those portions he might have been taught during a conventional apprenticeship. The distinction between direct mentorship and scholarly lineage holds important implications for understanding the transmission of knowledge within the Bloodravens chapter. Rather than relying solely on person-to-person instruction, which can be disrupted by the deaths of key individuals, they have developed robust systems for preserving information across millennia. This approach provides resilience against the loss of expertise that might otherwise occur during particularly costly campaigns or catastrophic events like the loss of Orlaya. The corruption of Chief Librarian Azariah Kairas represents one of the most grievous chapters in Bloodraven's history, though many accounts contain significant inaccuracies regarding both the nature and timeline of his fall. Perhaps the most pervasive misconception concerns Kairas's first exposure to chaos influence. Contrary to widespread belief, Kairas did not encounter the greater demon Ulcair during a mission to the Orlaya subsector. Rather, his corruption began when the planet Orlaya itself was dragged into the warp, trapping him within its crystalline core alongside the ancient demon. The distinction is crucial for understanding the progression of Kairas's corruption. Orlaya's transition into the warp occurred during a period when Kairas, then serving as a librarian under the tutelage of Moriah, was conducting psychic investigations into anomalous energy readings detected beneath the planet's surface. Their expedition discovered ancient ruins predating Imperial settlement, where they inadvertently disturbed wards containing Ulcair. The subsequent demonic manifestation coincided with massive warp storms that tore the entire planet from real space. Kairas and Moriah found themselves trapped within crystalline chambers deep in Orlaya's core, along with the partially manifested form of Ulcair. Cut off from all support and surrounded by the raw energies of the warp, they engaged in a desperate battle against the greater demon. Moriah sacrificed himself to weaken Ulcair, but not before passing his knowledge and position to his student. This left Kairas alone with the wounded but still dangerous entity for what would be centuries in real space, though time flowed differently in their warp-bound prison. During this prolonged exposure, Kairas did not immediately succumb to corruption as simplistic accounts suggest. Recovered fragments of his personal journals indicate that he initially maintained his psychic defenses, continuing to bind and weaken Ulcair while searching for a means of escape. However, the isolation and constant psychic assault gradually eroded his resistance. The demon employed subtle manipulations rather than direct temptation, planting seeds of doubt about the Emperor's protection and the chapter's abandonment of their librarian. By the time a warp anomaly provided Kairas an opportunity to escape, his corruption was well advanced though carefully concealed. He emerged from the warp not in the Orlaya subsector, but in a distant region of space, where he was recovered by a Blood Raven's vessel approximately 3 centuries after his disappearance. His miraculous return was celebrated throughout the chapter, with few questioning how he had survived or what experiences had shaped him during his absence. Another significant misconception concerns Kairas's alignment with the ruinous powers. Popular accounts often portray him as a devoted servant of Khorne, pointing to the bloodshed that accompanied the later stages of his corruption. However, a more nuanced examination of his actions and the testimonies of those who encountered him reveals a more complex reality. Kairas did not dedicate himself exclusively to the Blood God until the final phases of his plan, instead operating as a servant of chaos undivided throughout most of his corrupted existence. This distinction explains several otherwise puzzling aspects of his behavior. A true devotee of Khorne would disdain the subtle manipulations and political maneuvering that characterized Kairas's rise through the chapter hierarchy. Instead, Kairas displayed the calculated pragmatism typical of those who balance the influences of multiple chaos powers, employing deception and psychic dominance when necessary, while still orchestrating significant bloodshed to strengthen his position with Khorne. Recovered Vox recordings from the final confrontation on Cyrene reveal the truth of this matter. When challenged by Gabriel Angelos, Kairas declared his intention to ascend as a demon prince of Khorne specifically, indicating this as the culmination of his ambitions rather than a long-standing allegiance. The massive ritual of bloodshed he orchestrated across the subsector represented not continued service to Khorne, but the final offering needed to secure demonic ascension under the Blood God's patronage. The tactical implications of this clarification are significant. Had Kairas been solely dedicated to Khorne from the beginning of his corruption, his actions would have followed more predictable patterns, potentially allowing the chapter to identify and counter his influence earlier. His actual approach as a servant of chaos undivided made him far more dangerous, enabling him to adapt his methods according to circumstances and employ a wider range of corrupting influences against potential rivals or threats within the chapter. Kairos' ascension to the position of chief librarian and later chapter master demonstrates the effectiveness of this approach. Rather than relying on brute force or obvious corruption, he cultivated a network of influences throughout the chapter, identifying battle brothers susceptible to manipulation and gradually placing them in positions of authority. Those who showed resistance to his influence often found themselves assigned to high-risk deployments from which they did not return, their deaths appearing as honorable sacrifices rather than convenient eliminations. The corruption of Apollo Diomes, captain of the Honor Guard, exemplifies Kairos' methods. Rather than attempting to corrupt Diomes through direct exposure to chaos, Kairos exploited the captain's rigid devotion to hierarchy and protocol. By presenting himself as the embodiment of chapter authority and framing any questioning of his decisions as borderline heresy, Kairos transformed Diomes' loyalty into a weapon against those who might expose the truth. This subtle manipulation proved far more effective than any attempt at direct corruption would have been against a warrior of Diomes' spiritual strength. Throughout this period, Kairos maintained the appearance of orthodox leadership, continuing to preside over chapter rituals and issue tactical directives that achieved legitimate victories against the enemies of the Imperium. This duality served multiple purposes. It maintained his cover while allowing him to eliminate potential rivals by sending them against genuine threats, and each victory strengthened the chapter's trust in his leadership, while providing opportunities to recover artifacts that furthered his corrupt agenda. The extent of Kairos' psychic abilities played a crucial role in concealing his corruption. As one of the most powerful psychers in chapter history, he could shield his thoughts from other librarians and implant subtle compulsions in those who served under him. These abilities allowed him to maintain his facade even under circumstances that would have exposed a less capable traitor. When necessary, he could cloud the perceptions of those around him, making them perceive actions and orders as more reasonable or orthodox than they actually were. His position as chief librarian before becoming chapter master afforded him additional protection from discovery. In this role, he oversaw the training and assessment of all Blood Raven psychers, allowing him to identify and neutralize any who might have the potential to detect his corruption. Those librarians who showed exceptional talent for divination or the detection of chaos influence were either brought under his direct mentorship, where they could be carefully monitored and potentially corrupted, or assigned to distant deployments where they posed no immediate threat to his plans. The revision of chapter records under Kairos' direction represents another aspect of his long-term strategy. By selectively editing historical accounts and restricting access to certain archives, he gradually obscured connections that might have revealed patterns of corruption. This manipulation extended to the chapter's understanding of its own origins, as Kairos recognized that uncertainty about their primogenitor created a vulnerability he could exploit. By positioning himself as a dedicated seeker of this knowledge, he could justify actions that might otherwise have raised suspicion, including the recovery of artifacts from worlds with known chaos presence. Kairos' corruption manifested physically only in its advanced stages, another factor that helped conceal his true nature. Unlike many who fall to chaos and quickly develop obvious mutations, he maintained a largely unchanged appearance until near the end of his rule. This restraint, likely a deliberate choice rather than happenstance, allowed him to continue direct interactions with Imperial authorities and other Space Marine chapters without arousing immediate suspicion. Only those with significant psychic sensitivity might detect subtle wrongness in his aura, and such individuals rarely had sufficient authority to challenge a chapter master. The full extent of damage inflicted on the Blood Ravens during Kairos' leadership remains difficult to quantify. Beyond the direct casualties of the Aurelian Crusades, his influence corrupted numerous battle brothers and distorted chapter traditions in ways that continue to reverberate. Perhaps most insidiously, he exploited the chapter's reverence for knowledge, transforming their scholarly pursuits into potential vectors for corruption by directing research toward subjects and artifacts that served his hidden masters. When Gabriel Angelos and his loyalist forces finally confronted Kairos on Cyrene, the corrupted chapter master had nearly completed his transformation. The ritual of bloodshed conducted across the subsector had empowered him significantly, allowing him to manifest abilities far beyond even his previously formidable powers. Witnesses described how the very air around him seemed to distort with crimson energies, and his voice carried unnatural harmonics that caused physical pain to those who heard it. Even in this advanced state of corruption, however, he maintained enough of his original cunning to nearly succeed in his final gambit. The confrontation on Cyrene represented not just a physical battle, but the culmination of ideological conflict over the chapter's very nature. Kairos embodied the darkest potential of the Blood Raven's pursuit of knowledge, power sought without moral constraint, wisdom corrupted by pride. Against him stood Angelos and his loyalists, representing the chapter's highest ideals of knowledge in service to humanity and the Emperor. This philosophical dimension elevated the conflict beyond a simple clash of forces, making it a decisive moment in defining what the Blood Ravens would become in its aftermath. Kairos' defeat and the subsequent reorganization of chapter command under Gabriel Angelos marked the beginning of a painful period of reflection and reform. The new chapter master instituted rigorous psychic screening protocols for all ranking officers and expanded access to previously restricted historical records, believing that transparency would help prevent similar corruption in the future. These measures, while necessary, revealed the extent of Kairos' manipulation and forced many battle brothers to confront uncomfortable questions about their own unwitting complicity in his schemes. The legacy of Kairos' corruption continues to influence Blood Raven's operations in the present era. The chapter approaches the collection and study of artifacts with greater caution, implementing multiple layers of psychic warding and inspection before new items are incorporated into their repositories. Librarians undergo more frequent assessment for signs of corruption, and a system of peer review ensures that no single individual can exert unquestioned control over psychic activities. These safeguards, while sometimes reducing operational efficiency, reflect hard-learned lessons about the dangers that can arise from within. The Blood Raven's traditions and cultural practices reflect their unique position within the Adeptus Astartes, shaped by both their mysterious origins and their tumultuous history. A fundamental correction to common misconceptions about the chapter involves their recruitment practices. Many imperial records erroneously list Cyrene as an active recruitment world throughout the chapter's history, but this is demonstrably false. Cyrene was destroyed during the events preceding the Tartarus campaign when Gabriel Angelos called down exterminatus upon his homeworld after discovering widespread chaos corruption among its population. This tragic act occurred early in the chapter's documented history, meaning Cyrene could not have served as a recruitment world for most of the Blood Raven's existence. Following the loss of Cyrene and later Orlia, the Blood Ravens established a nomadic recruitment pattern across multiple worlds in subsector Orlia and beyond. This approach has become deeply ingrained in their chapter culture, with dedicated recruitment teams traveling aboard specialized vessels to identify and gather potential aspirants. These teams consist of chaplains, apothecaries, and veteran battle brothers who have demonstrated both combat prowess and the discernment necessary to recognize suitable candidates. The Blood Raven selection process differs notably from many other chapters. While all Space Marines value physical strength and courage in their aspirants, the Blood Ravens place unusual emphasis on cognitive abilities and problem-solving skills. Potential recruits face trials designed to test not only their physical resilience, but also their capacity for adaptation and learning. One such trial, the Labyrinth of Ross Paradise, requires aspirants to navigate a series of chambers filled with deadly traps and puzzles, with success measured not merely by survival, but by the strategies employed. This emphasis on intellectual capability reflects the chapter's core philosophy regarding warfare. Blood Raven's doctrine holds that victory comes not simply through superior force, but through superior understanding. knowing when, where, and how to apply strength most effectively. As recorded in the teachings of Azariah Vidya, the warrior who knows only his weapon is forever limited by its reach, while the warrior who knows his enemy may strike where no defense exists. The distinctive battle cry of the Blood Ravens, "Knowledge is power, guard it well," encapsulates this philosophy. Unlike the more straightforward battle cries of many chapters that emphasize courage or ferocity, this maxim reminds each battle brother that information represents a weapon as valuable as bolter or blade. Blood Ravens are trained to observe and analyze even amid the chaos of combat, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities that might escape notice by less studious warriors. This cultural emphasis on knowledge manifests most visibly in the chapter's approach to artifacts and relics. The Blood Ravens maintain one of the most extensive collections of war gear, ancient texts, and xenotech items among all Space Marine chapters. Each company includes designated battle brothers responsible for identifying and securing items of potential value during campaigns. These keepers of antiquity receive specialized training in recognizing archaeotech, Xenos artifacts, and items of historical significance, allowing them to make rapid assessments under combat conditions. The chapter's collection practices have occasionally generated tension with other Imperial organizations. The Adeptus Mechanicus has filed numerous formal complaints regarding Blood Raven's appropriation of technological artifacts that Mechanicus doctrine reserves for their exclusive study. Similarly, other Space Marine chapters have expressed concern over the Blood Raven's possession of relics bearing the heraldry of their own brotherhoods. The infamous magpie epithet stems from these controversies, though Blood Ravens themselves consider the term misrepresentative of their scholarly approach to acquisition. When questioned about artifacts bearing other chapters' markings, Blood Ravens typically reference detailed acquisition records describing how each item came into their possession. Most commonly, these records document formal presentations. Gifts bestowed upon Blood Raven's officers in recognition of assistance rendered or alliances formed. Captain Gabriel Angelos reportedly maintained an extensive log of such exchanges, including the names of the presenting officers and the circumstances surrounding each gift. This gifting tradition has become so ingrained in Blood Raven's culture that they have developed elaborate ceremonies for receiving and cataloging new acquisitions. Items of particular significance undergo ritual purification and blessing before being incorporated into the chapter's repositories. Tech Marines perform extensive analysis of technological artifacts, while librarians examine items with potential psychic properties. This methodical approach helps prevent the introduction of corrupted or dangerous objects into their collection, a safeguard implemented with particular rigor following Kairos' fall. The chapter's heraldry reflects their dual nature as warriors and scholars. The raven symbol represents wisdom and foresight in many human cultures, while the blood drop acknowledges both their nature as Space Marines and the sacrifices required in the Emperor's service. Individual blood ravens often incorporate subtle variations into their personal heraldry to commemorate significant achievements or campaigns. These modifications remain within strict parameters established by the chapter's chaplains, ensuring unit cohesion while allowing for personal expression. Blood Raven's armor typically features numerous purity seals and scriptural passages, more so than many other chapters. These inscriptions often contain fragments of ancient texts recovered during campaigns or excerpts from the writings of revered chapter heroes. The practice serves both devotional and practical purposes, reinforcing each battle brother's connection to chapter traditions while providing spiritual protection against warp influences. Following the Kairos heresy, these protective markings were expanded and reinforced across all chapter equipment. The Blood Ravens maintain several distinctive combat traditions that set them apart from more codex-adherent chapters. Among these is the Wisdom of the Ancients protocol, wherein dreadnoughts are regularly awakened outside of combat situations to share their knowledge with younger battle brothers. While most chapters consult their dreadnoughts primarily for tactical expertise, the Blood Ravens particularly value their historical perspectives and first-hand accounts of ancient campaigns. This practice helps maintain continuity of knowledge despite the loss of written records during catastrophes like the fall of Orlaia. Another notable tradition is the Circle of Scrutiny, a ritual debate conducted before major engagements. Company captains and their senior sergeants gather to analyze intelligence reports and propose tactical approaches, with each officer expected to challenge the assumptions underlying others' strategies. This formalized system of critique helps identify potential weaknesses in battle plans before they are executed. The tradition dates back to the teachings of Azariah Vidya, who warned against the dangers of unchallenged strategic orthodoxy. The Blood Ravens Librarius maintains its own distinct traditions, reflecting the chapter's unusually high proportion of psychers. Potential librarians undergo a rigorous selection process beyond that required of regular aspirants, including extensive testing for both psychic potential and mental resilience. Those who display psychic abilities but insufficient control are not simply rejected, but carefully monitored and sometimes assigned to specialized non-combat roles where their talents can serve the chapter without risk. Training within the Librarius follows a structured progression through traditional ranks: lexicanum, codicea, and epistolary, but incorporates unique elements specific to Blood Ravens' practices. Particular emphasis is placed on mnemonic techniques and information retention, with initiates expected to memorize vast amounts of tactical and historical data. This training serves both to strengthen mental discipline, crucial for warp manipulation, and to preserve chapter knowledge against potential loss of physical records. Blood Ravens librarians specialize in certain psychic disciplines at higher rates than those of other chapters. Divination and telekinesis see particularly widespread use, reflecting the chapter's emphasis on intelligence gathering and tactical flexibility. Notably, the Blood Ravens maintain an unusually comprehensive catalog of anti-demonic wards and banishment techniques, accumulated through millennia of encounters with warp entities. This specialized knowledge proved invaluable during the chapter's confrontations with chaos forces throughout the Aurelian campaigns. The chapter's approach to gene seed monitoring and preservation reflects their scholarly nature. Blood Ravens apothecaries maintain extensive records tracking subtle variations in gene seed expression across different recruitment worlds and generations of battle brothers. This meticulous documentation has allowed them to identify potential instabilities before they manifest as serious mutations, implementing corrective measures through selective implantation practices. Their gene seed archives contain samples dating back centuries, preserved in stasis fields aboard multiple vessels to guard against catastrophic loss. This careful attention to gene seed purity takes on particular significance given the chapter's uncertain lineage. Without confirmed knowledge of their primogenitor, Blood Ravens cannot rely on established patterns of gene seed expression documented in other chapters. Instead, they must build their understanding through observation and analysis, treating their own biological heritage as yet another mystery to be investigated with scholarly rigor. The Blood Ravens' cultural emphasis on knowledge extends to their remembrance practices for fallen battle brothers. While all Space Marine chapters honor their dead, the Blood Ravens place particular importance on preserving the experiences and insights of the fallen. The rite of memory preservation involves senior librarians psychically extracting significant memories from mortally wounded battle brothers when circumstances permit. These memories are preserved in specially prepared crystal matrices and later reviewed by chapter commanders for valuable tactical information or historical context. For those battle brothers whose memories cannot be preserved, the chapter maintains the Scrolls of the Fallen, massive records documenting the deeds and observations of each deceased warrior. Battle brothers are encouraged to regularly contribute to these scrolls, ensuring that their knowledge will outlive them should they fall in combat. The practice creates a sense of continuity across generations, with even the newest initiates able to learn from predecessors who died millennia earlier. The chapter's fortress monastery arrangements have evolved significantly following the loss of Orlaia. Rather than establishing a new permanent headquarters, the Blood Ravens distributed their command structure across several battle barges and strike cruisers. This fleet-based approach offers strategic flexibility and protection against catastrophic losses similar to those suffered when Aurelia was lost to the warp. Each vessel maintains specialized facilities reflecting aspects of traditional fortress monastery functions: training chambers, reliquaries, and command centers. The battle barge Omnis Arcanum serves as the chapter's primary repository of knowledge, housing the most comprehensive collection of texts and artifacts. Its central chambers contain environmentally controlled vaults where ancient manuscripts and data crystals are preserved against degradation. Access to different sections is strictly regulated according to rank and purpose, with the most sensitive materials restricted to senior librarians and the chapter command. Following the reforms implemented by Gabriel Angelos after Kairos' defeat, the chapter's organizational structure was modified to prevent similar corruption from taking root again. Authority was deliberately distributed among several senior officers rather than concentrated in a single individual. The positions of chapter master and chief librarian, previously combined under Kairos, were permanently separated, with each serving as a check against potential excesses by the other. Additionally, company chaplains received expanded authority to monitor command decisions for signs of corruption or deviation from chapter traditions. These reforms reflect a painful lesson learned through the Kairos heresy, that the Blood Ravens' pursuit of knowledge, while fundamental to their identity, carries inherent risks. The chapter now approaches new discoveries with a balance of scholarly enthusiasm and cautious scrutiny, particularly regarding artifacts of unknown provenance or texts dealing with warp phenomena. This measured approach represents not an abandonment of their knowledge-seeking traditions, but a more mature understanding of the responsibilities such pursuits entail. As the Blood Ravens continue their service in the 42nd millennium, they stand as a chapter transformed by adversity, yet committed to their foundational principles. Under Gabriel Angelos' leadership, they have recommitted themselves to the Emperor's service while maintaining their distinctive approach to warfare and knowledge. The chapter's uncertain origins, once a source of insecurity, have become integrated into their identity, a mystery to be embraced rather than a flaw to be hidden. In the grim darkness of the far future, the Blood Ravens continue their dual quest for knowledge and victory, their crimson armor a familiar sight across battlefields throughout Segmentum Ultima and beyond. Their chapter cry, "Knowledge is power, guard it well," echoes across war-torn worlds as a reminder that in an age of darkness, understanding remains the most precious resource of all, and one worth fighting to preserve.